Welcome to the Voices of Young People podcast, brought to you by Springtide Research Institute. In each episode, we hear directly from young people as they respond to our research and share about the issues impacting their lives. As sociologists and researchers, we see a new story unfolding for young people, one that moves beyond traditional institutional boundaries and requires careful attention to the inner and outer lives of emerging generations. At the intersection of being and becoming, it's the Voices of Young People.
I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I love everybody. I love talking and just getting along with everybody and making them feel welcome. It's just human to me.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Voices of Young People podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Packard, the Executive Director of Springtide Research Institute. All throughout this second season, we are going chapter by chapter and digging into each of the 8 values that we cover in our newest book, Meaning Making, the 8 values that drive America's newest generations. And today we're going to be talking all about welcoming. This is, I think, one of the more surprising things that ended up showing up on this list that helps to really distinguish emerging generations from older generations. That this notion that it is not just assumed that everybody is welcome in a particular place, but that it's actually the job of the people and the organizations, the leaders that we work with, to be welcoming and to create a welcoming environment, or else young people are they're not going to be attracted to your organization, to your group, to your company, and you're going to be worse off for it. So with that in mind, today we're going to be talking with Blake. Blake, it's so good to have you here. Can you introduce yourself, give people a sense of who you are and where you're at?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everybody. My name is Blake Newborn. I'm 19 and I live in Pennsylvania. My pronouns are he/him. And I founded the organization Teen Talk Hotline. Teen Talk Hotline is an organization dedicated to helping, inspiring, and empowering youth through initiatives and speaking up about important topics that youth face.
It's the work you do at Teen Talk Hotline, Blake, is super fascinating and incredibly important. And it's a big, we're partners at Springtide with Teen Talk Hotline, and happy to be so. Can you give the people listening a sense of sort of like what prompted you to even start Teen Talk Hotline and sort of what role it plays in people's lives?
Yeah, actually, welcoming plays a huge part as to why Teen Talk Hotline was created. I created it at age 15, which not too many people or teenagers at that age will actually think about doing something like that. And the reason why I launched it was because I was experiencing very traumatic events in my school. Where I did not feel welcome because I came out of the closet. And it actually led to me being diagnosed with depression and stuff. And it got to the point that it got really bad that I had to pull myself out of public school and go cyber school. And whenever I went cyber school, that's whenever I created Teen Talk Hotline, because it was kind of like, I didn't have that resource. So it's kind of like I made my own resource to make others feel like they're heard and they're welcome for who they are.
Yeah, Blake, this is such a powerful example, because part of what we are trying to convey to the readers of this book, the listeners to this podcast, is, that there's, I think a lot of times, let me back up and say, I think a lot of times young people have been positioned to leaders, to companies, to advertisers as like, you have an opportunity here to court this younger audience who, will be, and while I think that is true, the values that we have and that our research has uncovered in this book, and welcoming being one of them, also sort of suggests exactly what you're saying, which is that there is an opportunity, but there's also a real threat that, like, that school lost a really talented, driven young person, because they couldn't create a welcoming environment for you. So like, those are the things that should, if I'm listening to this and I'm thinking like, I run a religious organization, or I run a company or a nonprofit, like those are the things that would terrify me because it's like, oh, this isn't a value add. This is also something that is like mandated for young people, saying like, if you're not going to be welcoming,
Right.
I'm not showing up. And then you go and you entrepreneurially create your own thing.
Right. And I actually did report the instances to the school. And they did little to nothing to actually make me feel wanted at that school. So it is very important for not only schools, but for organizations and businesses to be like, hey, we support you. We welcome you.
Yeah. When we were in one of our other podcast episodes, Abdi Malik said, it's one thing for, every place has the metaphorical sign on that says open, right? But not every place that I walk into that has the open sign on makes me feel welcome. And that's sort of the dynamic that you're describing here too. We found this also in our research. My favorite, or sort of like most eye-opening finding from our survey is that 72% of young people say that it's important for organizations that they belong to create spaces where everybody is safe and welcome. In other words, this overwhelming majority of young people are saying like, this is the job of the organization. So I'm going to belong there. Like they better be creating a welcoming and open and safe space. So I know this is like a personal, like traumatic experience or a series of traumatic events that sort of pushed you in this direction. How are some ways then that you are trying to create welcoming spaces for others?
Well, through Teen Talk Hotline and stuff, we do that through our initiatives. We launch projects or campaigns that kind of follow the values that young people are going in. So for example, Black Lives Matter. Right now, that's a huge topic. And, we have people of color in the Black community involved in Teen Talk Hotline. And we, of course, wanted to make them feel welcome, because we don't want to be like, oh, yeah, come on our team, but we don't talk about your values or your beliefs. So we're actually speaking up about Black Lives Matter, as well as other topics like LGBTQ+, and the environment and stuff like that. So that's how we do it. Now, on a personal level, for me, I'm a lover. I'm not a fighter. I love everybody. I love talking and just getting along with everybody and making them feel welcome. It's just human to me. So now, yeah, that's about it.
But it's Blake, that like this is such a counter to, I think, like you say that as if it's a taken for granted that you like getting along with people, but I think where that might be a given, and some people might say, yeah, I like getting along with people too, as long as everybody understands that I'm right. You seem to be holding this space open for dialogue, which I think is a really key component to welcoming and making people feel welcome. But you're young, like how, some of these, sometimes obviously people are just capable of having good ideas, but sometimes we've had models that have helped, people, key leaders in our lives who have helped us, to teach these values to us. How did you get to the space where, you were recognized on not only that welcoming was so important, but also how to do it?
Well, I've had a couple adults in my life, which is my grandma. And she recently passed away. So it was kind of something that she always valued. And she was actually one of the first people I came out to. And she's like, oh, honey, I already knew. And just things like that, it makes me feel wanted. It makes me have purpose in life to keep going and stuff like that. So it's great to have that role model in young people's lives, because if I didn't have that, I don't know where I would be. And it's just very important.
Yeah. Well, and having those key people. I mean, like we've done this whole study about belonging, which highlights the need for trusted adults, whether family members or other things in the lives of young people. And those, we know how crucial those are. We know what the data tell us, and obviously you're confirming that. Are there, in addition to that, have you are there organizations that you've seen or that you've been able to encounter, or that you've gotten a chance to be a part of that have helped exemplify this value for you too?
Yes, actually. So I have a dream of modeling and acting. Now within that industry, it gets very vicious. I'm
Sure.
being completely honest. And I have an example of when I was welcome versus when I was not. Now, whenever I went to audition at this agency in Ohio, it was my first time I ever auditioned. It was like that first step, going after my dreams, and they were nothing but supportive. And the space that they created was so warm, welcoming, and it's been 2 years since I auditioned, and they're the agency I will be working with 2 years after I auditioned. So that itself should say something.
Sure.
Whereas I auditioned in an agency in Pennsylvania, and they weren't very welcoming. They made jokes about why models don't smile in pictures that were very inappropriate. And it was just like, I don't want involved in this. Like I wanted to get up and leave. That's just me.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously, like, poking fun of somebody about something that they care about deeply is going to be a huge turnoff. Do you remember what some of the things were that you in Ohio that you said helped to create that warm and welcoming environment?
Yeah, it was, they shared a lot of stuff. It was like kind of like a presentation thing, and then about like the agency, and then it went on to individual interviews for them to get to know each individual person rather as like a group. And whenever I had my individual interview,
Yeah.
her name was Susan, and she was asking me a whole bunch of questions, but it was kind of like, it was a conversation. It wasn't necessarily an interview. And the conversation was just asking me about, why I want to do what I want to do, and why I traveled from Pennsylvania the whole way over to Ohio.
Yeah.
So it was just very welcoming.
Well, to me, what stands out here, as we were just talking about this on our Lunch and Learn series about these chapters, and I was noting that sociologically, we've had this shift in terms of status, and without getting too far in the weeds, it's that where people used to think about, like, the more exclusive the space, the harder it is to get into, the higher status that I have because of it. I think we really see that shifting now, where status is about the breadth of your network and like how many people you can be, in touch with. And so the places that are more welcoming, like you mentioned, like, you remember that person's name, you remember that interview 2 years later.
Yeah.
And that becomes a marker of status of like, look at all these great people that I'm associated with, as opposed to this, like, look at this really elite club that I managed to find my way into. And I think that's really hard for adults to wrap their head around, because even for somebody of my generation, it was all about like, what is the kind of credential that you have, and how exclusive is it? And then, like, what is your title, and how hard is it to get there, et cetera. But this notion of welcoming sort of turns that on its head. If you really just want to be with organizations that are, wide-armed and open-hearted, that looks a lot different.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Like this has been, it's really great to get some concrete examples and life experiences around these concepts, because otherwise I think that they just sort of sit out there as concepts. And when something is just a concept, we get to bring all of our biases to it, right? But when we get to drill down and make it real, and you're a big part of helping to make that real, that it's sort of like we have to confront it head on. So thank you so much for your time, Blake. I'm really appreciative of all the work that you do at Teen Talk Hotline, and for coming on with us.
Oh yeah, of course. I had so much fun. Thank you guys.
Visit springtideresearch.org to hear more voices of young people and purchase our latest book, Meaning Making: 8 Values That Drive America's Newest Generations. Sign up for our newsletter and be the first to learn about our upcoming research, including the 2020 State of Religion and Young People report coming out this fall. Today's show was produced by Marta Abuaji and TJ Birnbaum, with original music by high school student Christian Unthank. Special thanks to our guest today and all the young people whose perspectives and insights make our research possible. Remember to find us on social media at We Are Springtide and share your own story with the hashtag #ShowUpForYoungPeople. Thanks for listening.